So thank you for joining us here in the morning. This is welcome to our 10:15 a.m. session. You could have been standing in the line for coffee, so I appreciate you being here. Although those who already have a coffee cup, I don't judge. You prepared well and you're here on time, so really appreciate that. I'm Elvis Joseph. I'm a principal professor account executive with AWS, and I manage the professional services relationship with customers like broadcasters, publishers, and audio industry customers. Now I'm here joined by one of our premier customers from AMC Global.
Hey guys, good morning. So my name is Sam Phillips, and I essentially head up our AI and emerging tech program at AMC Networks. My role is essentially twofold, as you can see from my very unwieldy title underneath my name. The other component of that is architecture strategy, which is an interesting responsibility, but you'll see how that kind of comes through in this discussion today. So pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me.
And I'm Paul Dulac, Senior Delivery Consultant. I think is the title now for Media and Entertainment. Been doing media and entertainment at AWS for the last 5+ years. And to make it really simple, I'm the builder part of this conversation. We build things.
Thank you, Sam and Paul. So here is a quick agenda. We have around 120 slides. We'll try to go through as soon as possible, right? Here's the thing. Every year at NAB, we talk about future of media workflows, AI this, automation that, operation effectiveness. We're not going to do that today. We're going to talk about something very real, which is currently in production and making a difference, right? And it is part of one of the biggest entertainment customers in the industry. And I'm talking about AMC Global, which is the home of The Walking Dead, Better Call Saul, Dark Winds. They came up with a bold vision. They shared it with us. And the rest of the session is about how AWS and AMC Global partnered together to make it into a reality that is really making a difference. I can talk about it in full length, but I would rather have a customer talk about it and share their personal experience. Over to you, Sam.
Perfect. So look, we have two major challenges that came out of our work within the AI committee. The first one is being able to discover where our content is in our library. Now, that is a pretty common challenge around the floor here today. Now, we could have taken a more direct route at solving that problem. There are solutions out here on this floor that I'm sure will do a wonderful job of being able to say, hey, you can use natural language to search for a moment, search for a clip, and also find highlights and do all of that really, really cool stuff. But the biggest challenge that we have as a global media company is that our inventory is spread out all around the world. It's in all different storage locations. It's in inconsistent formats. And when you look at the sheer scope of that and you think, okay, if I want to deploy a solution that leverages AI to discover across that entire library, suddenly that becomes very overwhelming. There's thinking, okay, do I need to consolidate into a single MAM? Do I need to consolidate into a single storage environment? And that's often a non-starter for most companies. So we had to take a slightly different approach to this solution and think, okay, I need to still work with my existing media landscape, but deploy an architecture that could connect to that, be sufficiently abstracted, where I can still move forward with my AI goals without needing to wait for other parts of the supply chain to get organized. So that was really the kind of first core challenge. The other core challenge that we acknowledge when looking at this problem is that and I'm sure many people here are really struggling to predict what the next 6 months looks like. So the concept of spending 3 months, 6 months, evaluating vendors, technologies, making a decision, and they might come to us with a series of models and a series of methods to achieve our outcome. Those models and methods may become out of date within 6 months, 8 months. And that's really not a place we can afford to be. The other aspect of that is we're also downstream of their product decisions, which means that if they go in a direction that is different to where we want to go within our business, then we're going to be stuck in a way. And I think that's something we really wanted to have flexibility and control over. So we came here last year and we met with the AWS team, we spent time at their booth, and we got inspired. We got inspired by this media lake concept. We got inspired by the idea of moving up in the architecture and being less reliant on point vendors at the point of usage. So yeah, that's really the gist of why we went in this direction with the solution. But I also think it's the gist as to why we were able to deploy into production so fast, because we were able to move without needing to worry about what is my current state. I could really focus on the future state. And I think that's an amazing place to be for builders. And that would be the biggest takeaway I had from this time. Drilling into the specific use case that we went to market with, we focused on our friends in marketing. Our social media team produces tens of thousands of assets a year. Each of those assets take a long time to find what you're looking for. You need to know the specific ID, the storage, potentially the time within the asset where you're going to find that moment that you want to put on TikTok. So it's really a kind of complicated situation for someone that needs to move quickly. It also limits your ability to discover things in the archive that you didn't know about before. So we wanted to open that up and maybe get some help with AI assistance. And additionally, what that does is it reduces our time to find those moments and time to assemble those moments into a deliverable that makes for good viewing on those social platforms. So I'm gonna pause there and throw it over to Jonathan, but to Paul. But the quote there from Jonathan, who leads up our department, I think really does emphasize that we now have a platform that we can roll with the times. When we have a new model or a new capability that we really want to pursue, we can now turn on a dime within a quarter and deploy that functionality to our business, which is a very exciting place to be. We're not spending a quarter doing ticket reviews and legal reviews and procurement cycles. We're now able to deploy services and technologies with our business very, very quickly. So it's a nice place to be.
And I'll pick up exactly where Sam left off, right? So the core of that problem being getting more access to the catalog, getting into the flow that AMC has, finding the stuff that you want, collecting it together, but more importantly, getting it into the rest of AMC's workflow, and not necessarily just as it is now, but in a way that's flexible and responsive to be able to make changes in the future, to see where things go in the next 4 to 6 months and be able to quickly pivot and have this system still be leverageable across that new ecosystem. And so that's how we ended up with AMC Prism as a platform. I could go to the next one. Prism as a platform to really serve as that core around which to build the starting point for integrating with the rest of the AMC workflow. And that's the 2-pointer, say the core of that being really that agentic AI search. And this is where I get to plug one of the AWS partners. So 12 Labs on AWS Bedrock, they're here at NAB. They have a demo that I really highly recommend you check out. They're an AWS partner, and they have their Marengo 3.0 model running on Amazon Bedrock, and that's what we're really using as the core of this search functionality. And for just a real high level of how it works, we'll start with a video asset because that's what gets all three of these modalities. But we put a video asset into the Marengo 3 model, and we get back the visual embeddings, which encompasses everything that you're going to see on screen, what's happening, who's doing it, anything in the image, that's going to be visual. And then the audio tracks are split into 2 different modalities. Audio, which is everything that's non-dialogue. I think background noise, birds tweeting, screeching tires. If it's in the background, if it's not somebody saying it, that's audio. And transcript is the dialogue. What are people saying? What are people saying in English? And I think there's support for something like 36 languages now, and you can search across all of them simultaneously. And that's been really, really useful for us and has served as really the core. For any one of these, we can get pretty complex with the search, but the other advantage that this gives us is the ability to combine modalities in a search and weight them depending on the semantics of what's actually in that search. So an example I'd give is we want to find 2 men in a red car talking about the impending zombie apocalypse. We can more heavily weight visual because we want to find that red car, and the transcript because we want to know that they're talking about that zombie apocalypse, as compared to I want to find a shot where you hear the screeching of tires and the roaring of an engine before a red car slides around the corner into frame, now we can more heavily weight the visual. We still want that red car, but also the audio. We want those sounds. We don't care what somebody's saying during that point. And the audio helps us find that dynamic, motion in the shot compared to just the static visual where we might have the red car. A lot of shots of that red car sitting around with guys in it talking. Now again, hop on to the next one. But the other thing that the Marengo 3 model gives us, which is really quite cool, is the ability to take that semantic search describing in more complexity what's happening in a scene over time and pair it with an image. And this is incredibly powerful for us because you can put anything in that image: logos, products, specific vehicles, celebrity faces, the faces of people who might not be celebrities yet and aren't in your data set for a general recognition model, right? Iconic structures, locations, the MacGuffin that was in last season. We want to see the guy, all the scenes of that guy holding the MacGuffin because next season it's going to matter. All right, Sam, do you have some?
Yeah, this one's really exciting for us. When you think about the scale of a media inventory for a global media company, you're going to get a lot of noise in those results too, even if they're brilliant results. So you could still be looking on page 3, page 4 for a really good answer to your question. This allows us to really dial in. And I think if you're looking at this from maybe a contextual advertising perspective, product placement is a huge piece that we're very, very excited about. And this feature release is really leveling up once more. Using natural language on its own is very powerful. It's how we want to interface with machines now. But if you do have something and you're working on a targeted campaign, or you're working with talent that you want to bring to the surface and not have to worry about any drift in the results, this is an excellent capability.
And this is something, so right now for Marengo 3 on Bedrock, we can do a single image and text, TBD on release, but in the near future we hope to be able to do multiple images with a single text and be able to combine more angles of somebody's face, a particular actor with a particular object or product placement, that kind of thing. And I think there's a lot of potential there. Okay, so moving on to a very high-level architecture that, of course, abstracts out quite a bit, but has the core points. And we really break it down into 3 things: ingest of the assets that we want to catalog, the actual search activity, and how do we get that integrated, like Sam was saying, into the wider ecosystem. Very broad strokes. We get your source assets. It can be video, audio files, or images. Drop it into S3, and in a very traditional Amazon AWS fashion, that kicks off a pipeline. That pipeline is going to feed those assets to Amazon Bedrock, running 12 Labs Marengo 3.0 model, which as an asynchronous process, right? Movies can take a while, but we'll get back those sets of visual, audio, and transcript embeddings, and we're storing those as a vector database in Amazon OpenSearch service. Search is the exact same process, just synchronous. You can take the text or that input image, if it comes in, fire it to the Marengo 3 model and get back a search embedding that we use to do a vector similarity search on OpenSearch. And that gives us back, right, a set of clips by relevancy that we can display to the user. They can go directly to clips. They can listen to what's in them. They can play them. They can jump around in the files. And most importantly, create collections of assets that they might want to use in whatever downstream system while creating an edit or anything. And the key is being able to then export that collection out to that downstream system. We already have integrations with one system currently for AMC. We're looking at adding more. And the key to that is really having S3 serve as the source of truth for those assets across systems, because then we're able to immediately provide references or pointers, right, from the AMC Prism system to their downstream systems, and the editors can immediately be working with the new assets. To wrap up my bit with this, I got to plug us. So all of this, the AMC Prism system, is built on a base called the guidance for a media lake on AWS. There's branding control for you. But that's on GitHub right now. That base platform is open source. If you take a photo of the QR code, it'll take you to our AWS Labs GitHub page. And there you'll be able to find a white label version of the UI. You can immediately start cataloging the video, audio, images that you've got. It's all on AWS serverless, except for that OpenSearch cluster's got to run. And there's multiple model support. So if you aren't sold on Marengo 3, you want to use a different model, we do have support right now for Coactive and I believe Nova MME, depending on your needs. But the important part is that we are currently demoing this here at NAB again. Talk to Robert Raver. He was here a second ago, but we'll be at the AWS booth showing this if you want to play around. And I think I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't also plug AWS ProServe. If you are interested in this, think that it'd be useful for you or your customers, please come talk to us. We've got some experience now doing this, and I think we can help get you off the ground in no time at all.
Thank you, Paul. Quickly, before we go into the Q&A session, I wanted to give a shout out to the team which did all these things. We have both AMC stakeholders and AWS on the screen. I'm not going to mention every name, but key architects like Danish Shamim, who's here, and then we have Robert Raber, which Paul mentioned, and a bulk load of people who have been helping from the AMC side. We had the right stakeholders, and we thank you, AMC, for making sure that the right stakeholders are available at the right time so that we were able to successfully put this into the production. So now the best part of it, we'll move into the Q&A. Paul, Sam, and I are happy to take 2 or 3 questions before we can wrap up.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I can repeat that question. Yeah. So the question was what percentage of the global AMC library has been ingested into the platform? So given the timeline to build and deploy that solution to production, we obviously had to make a priority call on which assets made the most sense at this time. So working with our social media team, we asked them to come up with a list of what are you working on this year? What are the core tentpoles? What are the major campaigns that are most exciting and that you want to get this tool over? And that became our priority list. And that was around about 1,000 titles to begin with on launch. The work now begins to start chugging through the original library and bringing that up to the cloud. And we've developed some services that will run those jobs overnight. And we expect over the course of the summer, by the end of the summer, we'll have the entire original library ready to go in the system. It's also, to be crystal clear, this is an emerging technology. This is something that, Paul is kind of learning in real time with us, that as we are chugging through this and seeing how these pipelines behave with more and more load, we're learning along the way. But so far so good. And I think if we're steady with this and we don't try and get too crazy with our uploads over the course of the summer, we're going to be in a really good place.
So AMC Global is one of the advanced customers who has been already using S3 extensively. So it was an easy lift for us to be able to move from the right bucket into this solution. But if there is a need for digitizing and migrating, we do have other archive migration solution which we can help you from AWS perspective. We work with some of our key partners to be able to take all the way from the Betacam tapes or LTO into S3, make sure that the metadata is enriched, and then eventually you can use through this solution.
I can also expand on that a little bit. So from a metadata perspective, we hooked up Media Lake via API to interface with our metadata management system. So every time a media hits Media Lake, it hits a REST API call and pulls a very shallow payload back from the metadata system, and that serves as our title metadata for within the Prism platform. We really want to keep that shallow. Didn't want any complex hierarchies in that data because it's not a MAM. It's designed for that kind of new search experience. In terms of the content itself, we had several different solutions depending on where the media was. So if we had something on premise, for example, that lived within our MAM system, we also have an orchestration that recognizes which version of the media is being delivered to that MAM system. So for example, we only want to focus in on a production master or a theatrical edit. We don't necessarily want a TV 14 edit up there because, for this purpose, searching across, you need to really search across one of those versions. So we try and pick the best one. We have a decisioning layer in there that then says, hey, that media needs to route to the Prism platform. And then once we recognize that ID, we send an event to our MAM, which restores that to the cloud. And it does that using a lighter weight MP4 format. That way, then the egress the cost is kept to a minimum, and we're doing our processing in cloud in a much more cost-effective way. Yeah.
Yeah, that also ties into, talking about processing in cloud. There's an initiative that you want to talk to Danish here in the front row. To get some of those edit suites and stuff also operating in the cloud to cut down on those kinds of egress costs, as well as get good latency and easy availability of workstations to somebody who might be anywhere. I'm going to say limited purview, and it's going to be a slightly unsatisfying answer. But in this particular case, and to the point that Sam was making earlier, that we're not trying to be a full media management system to compete with the, I think, very mature products that there's other people in this very room, right, that have to present. In this case, it's really about being able to quickly get a catalog onboarded and maybe interact with an existing MAM system, but leverage models that are not necessarily tied to your current provider of choice, while also being able to integrate in ways with your downstream systems that might also not be integrated with your current provider of choice, and in a hopefully very light touch way to build those integrations, as opposed to needing to necessarily negotiate a more involved contract with that. The goal is really to get to a point, especially now with all the latest advancements in LLM technology and being able to code more rapidly, to be able to do the simplest possible things to connect into those workflows, and do it rapidly based on immediate need or what we want to play around with now, rather than necessarily need to do something as robust as a full MAM system. Yeah, right. Yeah, I see it as complementary rather than a replacement.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that one more point. So where the name Prism actually comes from is being able to look at our media from different perspectives. I think what we wanted to do was come up with a media solution that places the content core at the top of the value within the enterprise. So at the moment, and I'm sure this is common across other media companies, the access to the media is kind of restricted to pretty traditional supply chain actors. That might be media operations, QC, edit, post. I see an emergence of a world where there's going to be more types of people that are going to want to interface with that media in the future for different workflows, different ways to create. We wanted to set something up that opens up that potential for AMC, rather than, kind of just thinking as a simple supply chain tool.
Thank you, everyone, for spending your better part of the morning. If you have more questions, our LinkedIn handles are on the screen. Feel free to connect with us. And if you need to know more details on how this is brought into reality, please stop by the AWS booth. You have a lot of demos there, and you have a lot of the SMEs and experts available who can answer your questions. We also have representation from our GenAI C team who can help you on how you can really take it into production and how we can help you and make it a success story. With that, thank you. Thank you very much.